Looking to pick up your very own custom sleeves? Well, look no further. Go to yourplaymat.com where you can choose to have your very own image on the back of sleeves, or you can choose from their amazing range of pre-designed artwork ready and waiting for you. Get them shipped directly to your door and use the affiliate link and discount code down below to get 10% off. What are you waiting for? Go and grab your custom sleeves from yourplaymat.com.
What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and today I am bringing you the Despia Albaz profile. So there's a lot of different versions. The way that the Despias, or what they are officially called in TCG, the Despains, can do is they're just a fusion abusing deck. They have so much consistency to search out a field spell which lets you fusion summon. They've got a very nice 2 boss monsters in the extra deck, this one being the more consistently easy to pump out. And I thought the best way of doing it is let's take it back to the core, let's keep it lore orientated and focus it around the Fallen of Albaz as well. For all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. Like the previous profiles from Dawn of Majesty, I will show you a very simple combo at the end that can kind of help you break your opponent's board and produce 2 fusion monsters in order to kind of go from there. This deck is designed to build to go second, and you'll see that as we go through the profile with some spicy little text as well. So, diving headfirst into this, we are playing triple Fallen of Albaz. Now, another card you could play if you wanted to, in addition to this, is Keeper of Dragon Magic. Now, by doing so, that does unlock more spicy options for you because he can search you out any kind of fusion or polymerization spell, which leads you to a little bit further, and it also allows you to bring back the Fallen of Albaz. We're then playing triple Alba, the Jester of Despia. So Alba is, we still don't know his origins, but we do believe that he is there's speculation that he's a Dark Alistair. There's speculation that he's a counterpart to Albaz. But ultimately what he does is if he is normal or special, you get to add a Despia spell, which is what's listed on this card, but the official ruling is a branded spell. So it means you can search out the field spell, you can search out the fusion spell, you can search out the revival spell. It's crazy, it's so consistent. If a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, while this card is in the graveyard, you can target an effect monster your opponent controls, special summon this card, and if you do, negate that target's effects until the end of this turn. So it does kind of deter your opponent from trying to destroy stuff because you'll get back Alba. Alba will then get you a search for your follow-up play for your next turn and go from there. We're then playing triple Despia Tragedy. This, in my opinion, is probably one of the best cards purely because of what it can do. So if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished by a card effect, you get to add a Despia monster from your deck to your hand, except himself. You can banish this card from the graveyard, then target a branded spell or trap in your graveyard and set it on the field. Only use 1 effect per turn and only once that turn. So that's where it's a bit of a drawback. But the idea is there's so many ways of consistently sending this card to the graveyard, banishing this card via a card effect to then search you out your Alba. So it's literally these two go hand in hand. And it's a shame that Comedy got a super and this one didn't. But hopefully this is a future OTS super. Then we're playing the one Dramaturge of the Despia. Now I only own one. I'm not too sure if I'd play 2, but at the moment, because I've only got 1, and keeping within the lore, I've gone with the Logother as well. Logother is pretty much Ecclesia, as far as I'm aware, definitely has the same markings and everything like that. So, the damage judge is basically, if a fusion, synchro, XYZ, or link monster is special summoned except during the damage step, you target an effect monster on the field, negate its effects until the end of this turn, and if this card is in your hand, field, or if this card is in your hand or field is used as fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, you get to special summon this card. So, unlike Tragedy, which if this was like Tragedy, it would have been a lot better. Like if this card was literally sent to the graveyard, banished or anything like that, you get a free level 8 summon, which is beautiful. Sadly enough, it's not like that. It needs to be used as fusion material, which you can consistently do and then be able to bring it back and loop it round. And keep in mind that if a fusion synchro or XYZ link monster is special summoned, you get to target an effect monster. So it's pretty much on trigger. If your opponent fusions, if they synchro or if they link, you get to go, okay, cool. Chain effect to negate. So that's where it becomes very cool. The Lagother is, if this card on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target 1 monster on the field, and it cannot be destroyed by battle this turn. Only use each of the following effects once per turn. If an effect of a fairy monster you control is activated except during the damage step, and it's just activated anywhere, you can special summon this card from the hand. You can target 1 face-up card your opponent controls and 1 attack position monster you control, banish that opponent's card, and if you do, change that monster to defense position. So again, it's just a free summon in the sense that if you activate Tragedy's effect at any point, or Despia's effect at any point, or Albaz's effect at any point, you get a free summon of the Lagertha. But to be totally honest, I'd probably go for 2 of this over having 1 of these if I'd get a second one. And the last card we play for the branded kind of engine is the Albion the Shrouded Dragon. So this card's name becomes Fallen of Albaz while on the field or in the graveyard. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can send 1 Fallen of Albaz or branded spell or trap from your hand or deck to the graveyard to apply the following effects based on where you sent the card from. If you sent the card from the hand, you special summon this card. So again, a free, pretty much boss monster summon. If you send it from your deck, you get to place this card onto the bottom of the deck and draw a card. Now the reason that is so good is because again, that sets up Tragedy. So by putting a branded in the graveyard, Tragedy can then reset it if you get Tragedy into the graveyard as well, and you choose not to use the effect because maybe you already have Jester in your hand. So there's a little bit of synergy on that one. The other thing as well that I'm not 100% sure of is if this card is in the graveyard and it sends a branded spell from the hand, all the branded cards say if they're sent to activate an Fallen of Albaz effect. So technically, because this card is in the graveyard, if you send it from the hand to the graveyard, you can set this back and then the branded spell will reset itself. So that's kind of cool. And the idea is you just want to get this out of the deck, make it become Fallen of Albaz, make it be a beta and go from there. Because the deck is designed to go second, we do play the 1 Prangatops with triple Nibiru. Nibiru actually serves multiple uses in this deck because, as you'll see from your Quinteris requires a light or dark monster. So if you give your opponent the token and you normal summon Fallen of Albaz, or not normal summon Fallen of Albaz, sorry, and if you get into your Despia, like you get your field spell and your Despia or anything like that, you can fuse using your Nibiru, reduce the Nibiru's token to 0, and then smash over it with the Quintuitus. So again, it just gives you a couple of different synergies, and the idea as well is with the Fallen of Albaz, there is a monster in the extra deck that does say if your opponent controls a light monster, or if they control a high level monster, and that's kind of what you want to use. So let me just try and find them quickly. So you look at the branded of the Glory requires your opponent to have a level 8 monster, and then the Albion the Branded Dragon requires your opponent to have a light monster. Keeping in mind that Fallen of Albaz lets you use one of your opponent's monsters to fuse when you summon him. So straight away, if you've Nibiru'd them, cleared their entire board, all you need to do is normal summon Albaz, Albaz effect to discard, fuse with the Nibiru the Primal Being, put a light monster in your graveyard, which is above a level 8, and a Albaz. Then you summon out your Albion. Albion can then use his effect to banish the Nibiru in your graveyard, if you do get rid of this as well. And your Albaz or anything you've put in the graveyard can go into this, or it can also go into the Quintuitus. So you've got a couple of consistent routes to get there, should you want to. These are just some examples of how the deck can operate and why Nibiru is important in the deck. Speaking of which, because we're going second, we do play a very nice Kaiju package, and it's always nice when you play Kaijus and they have a second utility in the deck rather than just going tribute one of your opponent's boss monsters. So, the 4 Kaijus we've got here, we've got the weakest Kaiju, which is a level 8 or higher. We've got the Wind Barrier Statue Out Kaiju, which of course is a level 8 or higher. We've got the Raiden, which is a Dark Kaiju, which again lets you get into your Super Poly targets, spoiler. And then of course you've got the Thunder King, which is a higher level 8, and of course it is a light monster. So again, it just gives you more utilities to get into your Branded Dragon, because in my opinion this is probably one of the best, because once you put, again, this card and Albaz in the graveyard, you can banish both of those and go into your Branded of Glory, and that's where the kind of synergy works back and forth. Not to mention Super Poly as well. So you Super Poly, you've got a Quintuitus if you give them this. You've also got the ability of Super Polying to make this guy as well, as long as you've got a Despia, and I'll all explain these when we get to the extra deck. Because we are playing the Kaijus, of course, we do play Interrupted Slumber. I'm only playing 2 of this. I don't want to brick on 3 of them, but the idea is if you see this, you can clear your opponent's board off. And like one of the best combos that I love is open up this with a Kaiju. You Kaiju the monster that might be able to negate this. Slumber, clear their entire board. So for example, Kaiju Dragoon, slumber their entire board. You get a Kaiju, I get a Kaiju, and then I normal summon Albaz, or I've got Super Poly and a normal summon Jester, and I'm pretty much good to go from there. Keeping in mind that Jester can also search you out the Branded Fusion spell, which lets you go further. This deck from the extra deck is purely going to be fusions. There's one XYZ, and I'll explain it when we get there. So why not play triple fusion deployment? Basically means you are playing 6 copies of Fallen of Albaz, because you reveal one of yours, bring out your Fallen of Albaz, and if you're going second, especially if you've not used your normal summon as well, you can bounce between your normal and your special with the Jester, your Tragedy, and of course your Albaz. You're then able to go, cool, fuse, let's go, and bring out your boss monsters. Triple Allure of Darkness. Now, whether Tragedy triggers off of this or not, it doesn't really matter, because you'd still be playing Allure of Darkness, in my opinion. You've just got so many dark monsters that you play multiples of that you don't mind banishing. Allure would be the best option, in my opinion. There's no cards in the deck that I'm like, I don't want to see at all, so I don't mind burying them as we go. We've then got Triple of the Search Spell. I really like this card. So Triple Branded Opening, again, is searchable off of Jester. So you discard one card, then take a Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense position. For the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters, which is absolutely fine because that is all we are going to be doing unless we go into turn 2. If a fusion monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by battle or card effect, you can banish this card from the graveyard instead. Again, protects all of your fusion monsters, which is another nice protection. And it's something that if you wanted to, I'm not condoning it, but if you wanted to play Dragoon, the best thing is if your opponent negates Dragoon and they forget about this card, and you just go, right, okay, cool. They try to destroy it, you go, fine, banish, and protect it, and they're like, right, okay, my only out to Dragoon is now gone. So just a weird example, but an example nonetheless. I've kind of gone with 2 theatres and 1 terraforming because the theatre is continuous. So, like, unless my opponent gets rid of both of them, and that's when I'll go, right, I'm in a little bit of trouble. And even then, I'm playing so many fusion spells that I don't really mind. So, the Theatre of the Branded, during your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material. If a face-up non-fusion fairy monster you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect or is destroyed by battle, you can type 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster in your graveyard and special summon it. So the second effect, in my opinion, is quite restrictive because unless you've put the fusion monster in the graveyard yourself, your opponent should ultimately be smart enough to take out your non-fusion fairy monster first and then take out the fusion so that then the second effect is redundant. But the idea is it's literally just during the main phase, fusion summon using your hand or field. So, very cool, which is why I've gone with the Terraforming Depthfin. Searchable by, of course, Jester. Yes, you do want to see it, but because I'm playing so many different fusion spells, it's not really that big of an issue. Again, because we're going second, the best fusion spell in the entire game of being Super Poly. And the best thing about this is, for example, if we went normal summon Albaz, discard, and they went Appaloosa to negate, you go, right, okay, no worries, activate Super Poly. Or if you've got the Super Poly and you don't want to use your discard, because you might be discarding one of the branded spells or traps, you activate normal summon Albaz, activate Super Poly, boom, you've got what you need. This is obviously where Kaijus come into play. It's obviously where the Despias come into play as well. It's actually just an incredibly powerful card in this deck because you confuse with the greatest of ease. The only issue is quite like playing this in Shadows, you need to get the monster on the board. And the issue with that is as soon as you normal summon either your Albaz or your Jester, you're going to want to trigger their effects. And that's where your opponent can then interrupt to negate before you can chain the Super Poly, or you'd have to chain the Super Poly afterwards, and then by doing so, you should be able to get both effects off as well. Then for the branded spells, I'm only playing 1 of each because it's a go second, I'm being a bit more aggressive. We've got the 1 branded Bond, which lets you special summon a Fallen of Albaz that is banished in your hand or grave. And during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent to activate the effect of Fallen of Albaz this turn, you get to reset it. So the reason I've gone with 1 of this is, again, it's only really going to be ideal if I've fused with an Albaz in the hand or the field or anything like that, or I've put the dragon into the graveyard, anything along those lines to then activate and bring it back. And it's easily searchable should I need it. If I feel that I'm going to need more of these, I will, of course, bump it up. Branded of White is basically a fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material, including a dragon monster, which is very specific. You can also banish monsters from your graveyard as material if you use Fallen of Albaz from your field, hand, or by banish it from the graveyard. Again, during the end phase, if it's used for the effect of an Albaz, you can reset it. Obviously, in the new set, the Despias get branded in red, which makes it a little bit easier to kind of fusion summon. But the idea behind this is you're getting a fusion spell that, when you think about it, if you've put enough in your graveyard, and especially with stuff like Prankatops and your Kaijus, you can ultimately go Albaz, fuse with one of your opponent's monsters, putting it into the graveyard. Make your Albion. Your Albion can then use the Albaz and the monster that you've fused with in the graveyard as material to give you another fusion monster. If you do keep your Albaz in that graveyard and maybe you've opened up a second Albaz and you decide to use branded in white, or you get branded in white off of your Jester because you've normal summoned the Jester or anything along those lines, you're then able to pump out 3 fusion monsters with the greatest of ease. 1 Foolish Burial, so pretty much you can set up either your big Dogmatica, like the Despia monster, by sending it to the graveyard and then use it as fusion material to revive it. Or of course you send your tragedy. Along with tragedy as well, you've got your gold sark to again banish your tragedy, get the effect off the gold sark, and still gives you that search. So you're constantly trying to get to Albert and Albaz. 1-for-1 again, these are all mainly for tragedy, and the core body go to protect you. It is a 42 card deck, so if you're like, I don't really want to rely on tragedy that much, so you can take those cards out or take those 2 cards out, and you're pretty much still good to go. So again, it's just a couple of options to look at. And like I said, because I'm decided to go second, they can easily be hand traps as well if you wanted to. But the way I've seen it is, I don't really care what you put on your board. Like, the only thing this deck will struggle against is back row at the moment. And that's where you would make the personalised call of going, right, okay, my opponent's playing a lot of back row. I'm going to take out 1-for-1 and Foolish Burial, and I'm going to put in 2 Twin Twisters or 2 Cosmic Cyclones or evening matches or anything like that. You ideally want to be able to do your battle phase because you've got great consistency to OTK, which is why Twin Twisters or Cosmic might be better for you. But it really does come down to your personal preference and your local environment. Like, if your local environment is not back row heavy and it's just combo heavy, then you stick with your Nibiru's. If they're all control, then you could possibly even put in a Denko in this deck because you do have that ability to constantly fuse from your hand and the graveyard. The Denko set, shut your opponent's sideboard down, and then just go for game from there. So that's it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. We will go through, I'll go through the spicy one-offs first. So the spicy one-off is your ding. Now, the only reason you would make this is either A, you haven't locked yourself into only fusion summoning, but 9 out of 10 you probably will, or B, because you're pumping out level 8 fusion monsters, it's just those ones for game 2, or like turn 2, you make your ding to send a card using the materials, absolutely fine. And then you've got ding to protect the rest of your stuff you make. So then you can start going, right, okay, fuse into Quinteris. Quinteris reduce your opponent's monsters to 0, 25 free K already, and you get to kind of move your plays further up from there. So that is pretty much why I've played the one ding, and I had the space in the extra deck, so it's entirely up to you on what you want to do. I've got the one first Dark Lord, so shout out to Charlie on this one who's building Dark Lord Despia. I kind of looked at this, and the way I see it is just a 4K boss monster that can pay 1,000 life points to special summon a fairy from your hand or graveyard in defense. So it brings back materials consistently. It does require 3 dark fairies, so you do literally need to open up Jester, Tragedy, and of course, well, multiples of those or anything along those lines. And the idea is you use it, use the field spell, fusion summon. You've got a 4K boss monster. The big Despia is going to summon itself back. The Jester can then, the Tragedy can then search you out can search you out Alba, and then Dark Lord can bring one back. So then you normal summon the Alba. Alba can search you branded in white or anything like that, and you've just got fusion plays from there. Again, it's not an absolute must. It is just an option for you to look into. We've then got, for your super poly targets, your Starving Venom, your Mud Dragon, and of course your Dracus de Pelio. Just constantly, you've got the space in the extra deck right now, unless you want to play Extravagance or Prosperity, which if you do, completely fine, take out Allure and go from that route. But these 3 are pretty much your staple super poly targets right now. Then on to the Albert, I suppose, the Albaz kind of fusions, and then we'll go on to the Despia fusions as well. So for the Albaz fusions, we've got the one branded, the Glory Dragon, the one Spindrid, the one Titaniclad. Now, obviously, the ideas behind all of these is they're pretty much, again, super poly targets off of the back with your Albaz specifically. Obviously, move a column, destroy everything in that, or shift it a column and destroy everything in its column. This one, again, can't be destroyed by battle while you control this fusion summon card. Your opponent cannot target monsters you control with card effects. So again, gives you a bit more protection. And then Titaniclad is just going to become out as a boss monster because it gains attack equal to the combined original levels of the monsters used for its fusion material. So Albaz is going to be 4, and then if it's a monster with 2,500 or more attack, like you've given them a level 11 Kaiju, it's going to gain 1,500 attacks, a 4K boss monster. Then the best one, in my opinion, I really like this card, I need to pick up a second one, is Albion the Branded Dragon. So it requires Fallen of Albaz plus a light monster, which is why the Kaiju is important, and why also Nibiru is important as well. So if it is fusion summoned, you can fusion summon 1 level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck, except himself by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard, for your hand, field, and or graveyard. So obviously you can then start getting into Titaniclads and stuff like that. You can also go into your Starving Venom and kind of go from there. Then for the Despias, we do play 2 Quinteris. I need to pick up a second one of this as well. But this one is 1 Despia plus 1 light or dark monster. During the main phase, quick effect, you can change the attack of all monsters your opponent currently controls on the field to 0. until the end of this turn, except level 8 or higher fusion monsters. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can add to your hand or special summon one Fallen of Albaz or Despia monster from your deck, specifically. So the idea is that you've got a quick effect to reduce all your opponent's monsters, and if they can't get past beaters, they're pretty much in trouble. But the idea is you're going to be pumping out beaters, so literally, Albion can bring out your Quinteros depending on your graveyard setup. And then off of the back of that, your Quinteros can reduce everything to 0, which means you've got a guaranteed 5k coming in right there. So all you need to do is get another 3k off of one of your fusion monsters and go in for game there. Last one is, of course, the Despia Pro Skeleton. So it carries 1 Despia, plus 1 light, plus 1 dark. So during your main phase, quick effect, target 1 Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or Link monster in your opponent's graveyard, banish it, or special summon it to your field. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack and defense, whichever is higher. So again, very important that you can kind of steal your opponent's monsters or banish them as you need to. And then the last spicy text is the 1 Dark Claw and the 1 Anki. And before you go, hang on, I didn't see any way of making these in the main deck, that's fine. It's for the side deck for when you're made to go first. Let me explain by showing you the side deck. So the side deck, we are playing triple Mask Change 2. So the reason we play this is because your Albaz, your Jester, your Tragedy are all instant targets for Dark Claw. So being able to discard a card to trigger and turn any of your lower level monsters into Dark Claw is absolutely amazing. You can then trigger your Tragedy to give you a search for the Jester. So literally, from 3 cards, just a random discard, Mask Change 2 and a Tragedy, you can also summon a Tragedy, activate Mask Change 2, turn that into, wherever he's hiding, your Dark Claw, trigger the Tragedy to search you out your Jester, normal summon the Jester, obviously this has gone off that. Jester can then search you out a branded spell trap, which can then either be the field spell, or of course can be opening, or on top of that can also be branded in white, so you do have the ability to continue to go depending on what the rest of your hand is. So that is just a spicy example, and the reason Anki's in there is because if you get into 2 Mask Change, go into the battle phase, you can go Mask Change into Mask Change 2. You could, if you want to, play a second Dark Claw, because again, there are ways of abusing that should you choose to go that route. Then we are obviously playing triple Cosmic Cyclone because I think this is the best for your back row hate kind of plays. Triple Evenly because this deals with front row and back row. Can be Lightning Storm if you want to, it's entirely up to you. Double Trap Trick for probably one of the best trap cards going first, and that is Artifact Sanctum. Now the reason we've gone with Sanctum is you want your opponent to commit monsters to the board so that stuff like, so I would honestly take out Nibiru for these if I'm going first, and then you can take out some other, like you can reduce the kaiju count. But the idea would literally be that you go, let your opponent normal summon a monster to attempt to go into the extra deck. Then, before they try to go into the extra deck, activate Sanctum to summon out the Scythe. Scythe then goes, cool, shut down, you're not going into the extra deck, but you've already put a monster on the board, which means my Kaijus, my Super Polys, my Albaz, all of that is going to be live for me to pretty much use and abuse and then OTK for the next turn. So this is one of the best options, in my opinion, for this particular deck to work it. And that is pretty much it for the profile. Now, just a kind of couple of little text. Idea, or like a little very mini combo, but this is basically how consistent it is. So ultimately fusion deployment, or of course your Fallen of Albaz, plus a random discard, and again you're going second, so keep this in mind, plus a random discard, plus any kaiju. Now depending on what kaiju you get, even if you activate the interrupted kaiju slumber, this can then adapt what you're going to be able to make. Now ideally the one you are going to want is going to be your Thunder King, because the Thunder King will get you the most out of this, because then the way it's going to work is you'll go normal Albaz, fusion deployment Albaz, anything like that. Discard the random card. Oh, actually, no, sorry. Kaiju your opponent's monster first, then bring out your Albaz. I don't know why this has gone so dark. There we go. Then bring out your Albaz, discarding your card. And that is your 3 cards. So straight away, your Albaz can then go into Albion using your Kaiju plus your Albaz in the graveyard. And then you can use the Albion's effect to banish your Fallen of Albaz plus the Kaiju that's in your graveyard, because it is a level 8 or higher. And you can go straight into, where are you? You can go into a Titaniclad, which will then get a huge boost. So he's 4k already, 25 there. That's 65 going in direct to your opponent. Or, of course, you can go into the Branded of Glory, which will give you a bit more protection. And you still have 3 more cards because you're going second to play around with. So if at any point one of those was a kaiju, that's still missing a tap for game. If it is a jester, if you special summoned out the Fallen of Albaz rather than normal in it, you've got the jester, which can then get you the branded, and you've just got plays to go from there. Again, a very basic combo. I'm not saying that this is much in depth, but it just kind of shows you the alternatives and the options that this deck can produce and bring for you as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share. If this video gets 50 likes, I will be more than happy to either bring you a duel with this deck or, of course, bring you a test hand video as well. But as absolutely always, guys, stay safe and, of course, happy dueling.
Looking to pick up your very own custom sleeves? Well, look no further. Go to Yourplaymat.com where you can choose to have your very own image on the back of sleeves, or you can choose from their amazing range of pre-designed artwork ready and waiting for you. Get them shipped directly to your door and use the affiliate link and discount code down below to get 10% off. What are you waiting for? Go and grab your custom sleeves from Yourplaymat.com.